So one thing led to another. I wanted to go back to California and work in the NAACP Legal Defense Fund because that's what I wanted. But my mother said, you know, I need you to go to Baltimore. I said, Baltimore, why? She said, your aunt. She's had an aunt who's 75 years of age, lived up the street, 11 West 20th Street, apartment 6S. She didn't have any children. She said, my sister's older and she needs help. So I said, okay. I applied to clerk for Judge David Mitchell. He was here in Baltimore City. He hired me. And, you know, I clerked for him for a year. It was a great experience, learned a lot. He did juvenile. So I saw a lot with the juvenile system. And then it was time to get a job. I was like, well, I want to go be a public defender. I want to defend people. He says, okay. Public defenders didn't want me, but the state's attorneys wanted me, Mrs. Jessamy, Pat Jessamy. So I met Mrs. Sharon May, I met Haven Kodak, I met Miss Jessamy. I was like, oh, you make me seem like you my aunt from the South. You know, and so she blessed me, she hired me. I was in district court. One of the first places I was Southwest District. So I didn't really feel like I could prosecute people if I didn't know who the people were. So I volunteered to be a basketball coach at Rockland Heights Middle School. It was a great experience because I got to see the kids, I got to understand the community. I need to understand the community because once again, I wasn't from Baltimore. I thought it was a disservice being from the world, so to speak. I lived in Germany, I lived in New Mexico, Texas, was born, you know, Virginia, but I had never spent time in Baltimore. Went to school in D.C. That was a great opportunity because I got to understand the kids and what was going on. And so, you know, I really enjoyed being a young prosecutor in district court, working my way up through circuit court, and eventually I did a homicide, and I had student loans. So I left and worked for a big firm, Shulman, Treem, Chemical, Gill, and Ravenel. And I learned a lot working with them. I worked with them for about 6 years. We had a case going before the U.S. Supreme Court. It was a phenomenal experience. And then I started my own practice. I did my own practice from no clients to eventually people say I was one of the top criminal defense attorneys in the city, in the state. I did cases all around the country. And I would say I did 2 big cases. Well, I did a number, well, 3 big. Felicia Barnes, I represented the gentleman in charge of that. I was the one that, after they found him guilty, I made the argument, they got the case thrown out. I represented Sergeant Alicia White in the Freddie Gray matter, the African-American sergeant. That was an excellent experience because it was so difficult to go against your community and all that you knew the police had done, but I needed to stand up for this woman because I did not see a police officer. I saw a black woman, and I saw a criminal justice system, to me, that was going to treat her unfair because, not the color of her skin, but because of the uniform she had on, it wasn't going to look at all the evidence. And so it was very difficult. It was very difficult for me emotionally, mentally. I had my friends, I went to Howard, called me Uncle Tom, sell out everything you could imagine because I represented a police officer. But to me, that was the experience in life that said when you believe in something, you need to stand up for it. And I was very glad and thankful to have that experience. And to this day, Sergeant White is now, I think, Captain Alicia White in the Baltimore City Police Department. And, you know, look, people have different views about what happened one way or another. I get it. So the same day I was getting cursed out and called Uncle Tom walking to court representing Alicia, at the end of the day I was going to the jail finding people that Wayne Jenkins and that gun trace task force had jacked up. I took that information and I represented this one guy, and he was a big drug dealer. But we won that case and I was able to show what had happened. He's the one that they stole about $100-some odd in the safe. He's the one that cracked that case open. Once I won that case, I told my client the feds are coming. They're going to either make you a witness or they come at you because you violated the law. No doubt you violated the law, but the police violated your rights. They stole from you. When the police reach out to you, you call me. Feds reached out to him a few months later. He called me. I was able to get him and his wife to go before the grand jury. I was able to get some of my other clients to go before the grand jury because when I was as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, I began to put a case together against Wayne Jenkins and the corrupt gun trace task force officers. In doing that, I recognized that they had a motive, that while they were robbing people, what they were doing was wrong. I gave that information to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney's Office used that to convict Wayne Jenkins and a number of other members of the gun trace task force. I think I had 7 or 8 members, former clients that went through in front of the grand jury. A number of them testified in the trials. And from there, they were found guilty. Well, I ran for state's attorney. First time, as you know, I lost. And so that was a great experience for me as well because sometime before you win, you got to know how to lose. I needed to understand and humble myself, and to be honest, I was not emotionally prepared to be the state's attorney for Baltimore City. But I also had unfinished business to do with my cases, unfinished business to do with the Gun Trace Task Force. They wrote a book about, called I Got a Monster. I was the main character. They've done documentaries, movies, and all of that. That was phenomenal. But then I now moved, I ran an election, 3-person election, when many people said I wasn't going to win because I was against a highly favored incumbent. And once again, I felt God opened the door at the right time, the right place. I had the right message. Having been a criminal defense attorney and a prosecutor, I recognize that you have to hold people accountable. People expect to be held accountable, but if you don't, whether it's the police, whether it's the criminal element, then you're going to lose your credibility. And so my next time I really ran on how I really felt. And, you know, I do believe in sending you to jail if you earn that right to go to jail and you've done something of a heinous crime. But I also am really big on second chances. I believe we can rehabilitate individuals. I believe in the wraparound services for our young people, but I also believe in holding young people accountable at the very beginning. You're talking to a young man whose father did not play. And to this day, I'm still scared of that man. Every next month. But, you know, for me, it was a great opportunity to be your state's attorney. But the reason I say I wasn't mature is because, I'll be honest, when you become state's attorney in Baltimore City, you get a lot of notoriety. And if you aren't grounded in who you are already, it can go to your head. This is a position I said I run twice, so maybe 6, maybe 8 years. And then you could potentially move on to something else. I miss being a regular citizen, to be honest. I realized that. I mean, you probably saw I have my executive protection there with you. I'm single. You should imagine trying to date with executive protection isn't the easiest thing to do. But what you also have to understand is I understand how important this job is to working to keep the citizens of Baltimore City safe, working to change the narrative of our city that we truly do love. But I recognize I'm here for a moment to do the best job possible, and then I move on. Ivan Bates is not going to be the state's attorney for life. I am here as a luxury to do the job that you, the citizens, want me to do in help keeping you safe. But I also realize that I can't do this job by myself. One of the things I first did was reach out to the police department to reestablish relationships and to just go to the community to say, hey, what can we do? What are the things you care about? And what are the things that we need to do to make Baltimore safer? And so we worked very hard to reestablish and rebuild the office, the state's attorney's office. I got there were 134 attorneys. Since I've been there, I think the exact numbers we figured out, we've hired 86 new state's attorneys. And so some have left, some have come, but now I think we have about 170 some total in the office. We're rebuilding it, we're training. You know, we were going to be able, the governor just gave us a grant of $1.7 million to help with body camera. We have training. We're doing the things that we really need to do to build the infrastructure, not just for today, but for tomorrow, and eventually when I do leave this position, so that office can be a good, healthy office, because that to me is what's going to be important. Making sure we've developed an office, to making sure that we have a mindset to hold people accountable, but to do it in a way that's fair, that is just, but to also give people a second chance when they've shown that they've worked hard to earn those second chances. So I'm very glad to be here, and I'm very blessed and honored to be your state's attorney.
Thank you, sir. And State's Attorney Bates has led us into the next part of the conversation by talking about collaboration. I know that for many, many, many years, particularly in Baltimore City, that there was not collaboration. As a matter of fact, there was the opposite of collaboration between our police and our state's attorney. I would like the officers, particularly law enforcement officials, since Ivan has given a little bit from his side just in the last couple of minutes, to talk, if you would, Chief and Deputy Commissioner, about what that collaboration should look like in terms of law and order.
I can start in terms of that collaboration. I'd like to actually use Baltimore County as an example. We were one of the first community policing organizations in the nation, first 3 agencies in the country back in 1979 and 1980 to implement community policing. Since then, we've built an elaborate structure in our organization where we have police community relations councils across all 10 precincts in Baltimore County, the whole 612 square miles. We also, in addition, that have community outreach units in those precincts, and we also have a police foundation, and we have, it's probably in excess of 270 community associations in Baltimore County. With that said, as a police organization, in terms of cooperation and connection to the community, we have that connection. We communicate. We have everything from email chains to social media networks set up, so that there's always that ongoing communication, that interaction, and that interaction goes on from the chief of police down through the organization, all the way down to the police officer. In terms of that collaboration, we collaborate with our community, but we also collaborate with our state's attorney, with our other surrounding jurisdictions. As you know, there's also task force that we all belong to. So we have the Regional Auto Theft Task Force, and we deal with the issue of auto theft and carjackings and stuff like that. But we also have WATF, the Warrant Task Force. So we have long-standing cooperative agreements, MOUs, and everything in the area for those types of units. But there's also that collaboration between the state and local law enforcement with our federal partners in the agency, in this area, that we also belong to those task forces and that we work together. So I'll let Melvin go and pick up from there.
Well, listen, I'll just ditto what Chief McCullough just said. So let me just say this. For me, a light bulb went off. I think it was 2009 when I was the major over here, and I had 3 gang members come to my district, and they were sitting right outside my detectives unit, and I thought they were maybe witnesses to a shooting or something. And as I was walking out of the building, I walked past them. They said, "Sir, can we see you?" And I said, "Well, they'll be right with you." I was on my way to a community meeting, and they said, "No, we're here to see you. We're not here to." So, long story short, I sat down with them, and so here's what I recognized: you got to learn the pulse of your people in the community, and you got to learn to listen. And so I heard what they were saying, and basically they said, "Listen, we have ruined our lives." These were 3 gang members tatted up. I won't speak to the gangs they were involved in. But they were tatted up and said, "But we're so tired at this point. We don't want to be doing what we're doing, but there is nothing else to do to survive. And so we need your help. We need jobs and we need homes because we're surfing couches, yada, yada, yada." And I was so impacted by that. And what got me, they said, "If you help us," because here's the thing, and I was a major at the time, Major Russell, "we know about you through our fathers and our grandfathers." So I really felt old when they started saying it. But they said, "You have arrested a lot of people, but as Chief said earlier, you've always been fair. You've always did it with dignity and respect." So here's what we're saying to you. If you can help us fulfill those 2 things, then we can help you reduce the crime across this city dramatically. And that caught my attention. So I don't know if you remember this, Carl. I called Carl because they proposed, "Let us prove it to you." And I'm going somewhere with this. Let us pull the worst gang members, organizations, across to be in one green space, and let us just fellowship for a couple hours, and we promise you there won't be one incident. I said, "You're talking about where you guys come together and literally go out hunting for each other, these type of people?" And I started like, I promise you, we'll call a truce. So I bent the rules a little bit. I need to find green space, and if you know anything about East Baltimore, there's not a lot of green space. And so I bent the rules a little bit because they said, "Listen, we got to smoke marijuana. That's what we do." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I can't approve that." But I'm not going to tell you what I did because you'll probably look at me like I got 3 heads. They said, "We got to drink." "No, you're not going to drink." I bent the rules a little bit, but I called Carl, and I don't know if you remember this, Druford Blue, when he was running that school. They had a large, and there's still that large green space out back, and I begged him, I said, "Oh, can I please?" I don't think I even told you the full story why I wanted it, but I said, "Can I please have that?" He said, "Yes, you can have it." And so we allowed them to go there from like 4 p.m. until midnight. Now, I was personally doing a date out of town. We were in Myrtle Beach, baby. I don't know if you remember. And I got a phone call, and I got a phone call from one of the residents and said, "How dare you, Major? The park was a mess, all that racket all night long, yada, yada, yada." And I said, "Oh, my God," because But I told them, I said, you got to police the area. You got to call one of them. They said, what? No. Who told you that? It's clean. So I called the person back. I said, when did you see it? I just know. I heard all that noise all night long, that music, boom, 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 boom. I said, can you go to your front door? Because I knew where she lived. Look out. And, oh, my God, the park's never been so clean. And then for the next 3 days, they called a truce on crime across the city. There wasn't one homicide, one shooting, one act of violence throughout the whole city. I called them 3 days later, and if you know Baltimore, that's impossible. And I called them they called me 3 days later, we're just checking in, Major, anything happened? I said, I'm astounded, nothing. We told you. We all went on hold, now we got to get back to surviving. So we need you to go to work for us. And I was like, wow. So I spent the next 6 years of my life, here's the collaboration part. I said they need jobs. How do you get felons jobs? So I started talking to the medical institutions, Johns Hopkins, every hospital across the country, across this city. The universities, the eds, the meds, the hospitality, Under Armour, any industry that can employ people. And I had Ray Lewis with me, and I could talk freely now, but I used to tell them, the president of Hopkins, who was a really good friend of mine, the president of Hopkins University, Daniel and Ron, and I said, listen, you can't tell my commissioner. I'll get in trouble. You can't tell the mayor. I'm not sure how they'll take this. But I need you to hire these individuals. We'll clean them up for you, but then you got to hire them. So they did that, and we started hiring them at a rapid rate after we put them through a process and clean them up, job preparation. But then we started going to judges. Now, you know judges, they got their own mindset. They don't answer to nobody. I'm sorry, right? But we said, judges, we need you. We're locking them up, and you're letting them go. State's attorneys, we need you. ASA, we need you. Parole, probation. We can't do this by ourselves, so we built out a collaborative table full of all these people, even youth were at the table, to say, how do we take our citizens and restore them? Because it's going to take all of our effort. And so I can't go into everything we've done, but courts were holding diversion programs. Courts like Judge Wanda Hurd, a mentor of mine. Courts like Karen Friedman. They were all on board, and we were doing these incredible things. The commissioner of all the jails across the country, Pete France at the time, he said, come in, and we took in resources, and we were training them, and we were giving them people skills, and yada, yada, yada. Churches were being mentored to them. It was a collaboration across the board, even down to the nonprofits, drug rehabilitation. If you think of it, they were at the table, and we had weekly meetings, and saying, we will rebuild Baltimore, and we will do it one person at a time. I love what you said earlier about the things you built out, and it's still going on now 28 years later. Unfortunately, Baltimore, they call it a crab city for a reason. If your fingerprint's not on it, if you're not an innovator of it, and I'm being brutally honest, when new administration get in, that's not ours. I don't care how well it was going. Push it to the side. I will tell you, as soon as I retire, every initiative we built out with all those wonderful collaborators across the city, my phone started ringing by the people that I left behind. They're getting rid of it. They're getting rid of it. Why? Because they didn't do it. And so all of a sudden I started seeing violence tick back up in Baltimore City. And to this day, this year will be 4 years I'll be retired. 5 years come June. And I don't like what I'm seeing. Because the collaboration isn't the way it used to be. I love what Baltimore County's doing. They're still on track. And when somebody leaves with a legacy, Baltimore County is smart enough to say, that works, we're keeping it. And the citizens of Baltimore County says, you're not getting rid of that. Baltimore City needs to learn a lesson from Baltimore County and saying, we're not getting rid of that. That collaboration worked. And unfortunately, we keep going back to square one because of a new administration. And one of the things I like about Ivan, he didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater when he came in. He just took the broken pieces, got rid of them, kept the pieces that were working, and continued to build it up. That's where government really works, and that's what collaboration is really about. It ain't about any one of us. It's about all of us, and it's most important, it's about those that we serve, and how do we make their lives better. Because you make their lives better, you make the city greater. That's all I have to say.
Great. Anything you wanted to add, Ivan, to what your two other brothers have said?
No, just that when I was talking about the maturity level, and that's something I think when you look at what's going on within the maturity level, you have to understand it's not a me, it is a we. You know, as we've been very blessed, my first year, murder's down 20%. is me, this is me. It wasn't me, it was we. You know, the U.S. Attorney going, rebuilding, you know, I went to roll calls to see the police just to say, hey, we're in this together. You know, whether it's the HIDA, going over there, participating with HIDA, going and talking to the kids, the schools, the outreach. You know, we don't talk enough about the programs that are out there, such as ROCA, that are giving deterrence, other people opportunities that they don't have before. So if we don't all put our egos at the door and say, hey, this is the people's position, I'm here for a moment, I'm here to build upon, then I think that's exactly what Mel was talking about. When, you know, you have to build upon what's working, and then when you've had your time, move on, prepare the next group, then they move on and build and you prepare. So that's the process of doing it, and that's why I think, you know, when you sit back and you look at how you were successful, and, you know, even within the criminal element, you have to be able to sit down and have those conversations to say, okay, I hear you, I understand. I think having been a criminal defense attorney, I kind of look at it and I get it in a different light than I think some other people have.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that just because you've been part of the criminal element, you want to live that life.
That's right.
But how can we make those changes? Because there are kids in those neighborhoods that look up to the individuals in those gangs that's who they want to emulate. We don't want that. We know that's not for them, but how can we break that cycle in a way so that this young person doesn't get in before you know it? As I tell them, I'd rather deal with you in the juvenile system with wraparound services than dealing with you as a 15, 16-year-old that's pulled the trigger and killed somebody. Now you're in an adult system. So how do we do that? It's the collaboration.
Thank you.
Made it positive and are still continuing to make it positive by having you all teens to join on as well, to do positive in the world. There is good that can be done in the world, and it can be done by you. So get out there, get up, do something, and you know, don't let your lives, you know, turn into nothing. So stop fronting and get out there and do something. So this is Shantae Campbell reporting.
Catherine Dunham, say that. Catherine Dunham. Catherine Dunham, she really could dance. She danced and twirled. She danced all over the world. Malcolm X, say that. Malcolm X. Malcolm X, a Muslim leader, assassinated in New York City. It was a great pity. Ida B. Wells, say that.
Ida B. Wells.
Ida B. Wells, a newspaper woman with a pen. She wrote that lynching was a sin.
It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame.
It's the Hall of Fame. Do you know the name? Can you tell me the pictures of face in the frame? Start at the top, and you can't stop until you learn the names. Marian Anderson, Ralph Bunch, Gwendolyn Brooks, Matthew Henson, Dr. Martin Luther King, Leontine Price, Ethel Waters, Frederick Douglass, George Washington Carver, Catherine Dunham, Malcolm X, and Ida B. Wells.